Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ed Kranich with the Connecticut Green Bank. Thanks for joining us for the quarterly informational stakeholder webinar. We will be getting started in just a few moments as we wait for everyone to log in. Thanks.
Again, I think you were muted.
Did anyone hear that? Or...
Yes, Ed, this is Mackie. I could hear you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this quarter's informational stakeholder webinar. This is Ed Kranich with the Connecticut Green Bank. And today we will be hearing presentations from Brian Garcia, the President and CEO of the Connecticut Green Bank, Celia Price, Associate Director of Incentive Programs, Sergio Carrillo, Director of Incentive Programs, and Mackie Dykes, Vice President of Financing Programs. Next slide. So just to quickly go over the agenda, so we'll go over the fiscal year 2020 performance and the targets for fiscal year 2021, including some revised estimates based on COVID-19 and state of the world these days. We'll have a program update on the incentive programs and financing programs, go over Green Liberty bonds and progress to date, as well as some other items and questions and answers. So if you have questions as we go, please feel free to type them into the question box, and we will address them at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll pass to Brian Garcia.
Excellent. Thanks, Ed. Thank you for the welcome and the overview of our program for today. I hope everyone is doing well. We're now coming off of 2 seasons in this rather precarious time that we all find ourselves in. Just want to wish you all well as you continue your efforts to remain vigilant as we battle this public health crisis that we all find ourselves in. So I'm going to start off with talking about how we did in fiscal year 2020, and then give you a look at our plans for fiscal year 2021. Our fiscal year goes from July 1st through June 30th. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Andrea. All right, so we're going to take a look at first our financing programs. So the Green Bank is structured in 2 programmatic areas. One is financing. We provide capital for loans, leases, PPAs, and a number of other ways that we lend our capital out to help end-use customers, residential, commercial, industrial, institutional customers, finance clean energy improvements on their properties. I guess I would just start off by saying that, prior to COVID-19 hitting, we were making significant progress towards our fiscal year goals. And I think what we see more here in our financing programs is the impact of COVID-19 hitting in terms of some of our deliverables. We're doing really well on CPACE. We managed to hit quite a bit of our targets there. I want to commend our private partners out in the marketplace, Greenworks Lending, and others out there who are helping end-use commercial customers reduce their energy burden by financing clean energy improvements on their properties. We also saw some impact, in terms of our small business energy advantage program, which is a partnership that we have with Eversource and directly with Amalgamated Bank, who provides capital into this on-bill repayment program. So you can clearly see the impacts of COVID-19 on the uptake of this on-bill program. It is now picking back up steadily. Our solar power purchase agreement product, you can see there, we were short on our targets this year, largely driven by a pipeline that we're realizing with the state of Connecticut. We've got a number of projects that we're working through the system. Once we close on those projects and get PPAs signed and executed, that's when everything counts and clicks in. So all of that is coming down the road, and we feel really optimistic that things are going to steady here pretty quickly. And then in terms of our multifamily, we were ahead of targets heading into COVID-19. We set some really modest targets in terms of our multifamily programs, but COVID-19 has really hit this segment quite significantly. So you'll see in the next slide that our look ahead in terms of multifamily, we've really lowered our expectations in terms of hitting financing there. Why don't we go to the next slide, Andrea? So here is taking a look going forward for this coming fiscal year that we're currently in. So a couple of things to point out here. One is this is the first time we've ever set ranges for our targets, and this is given the uncertainty of COVID-19 on our economy. So we had a low and a middle projection in terms of our targets for the fiscal year. The second thing I would raise here in terms of our targets are that we added a fourth target this fiscal year. Up to this point, the Green Bank has had 3 targets: projects, total investment, and installed capacity. This year, we are adding greenhouse gas emissions avoided. Our mission statement states front and center that our focus is to confront climate change. And we specifically have an EV offset program that you can see there, third to the bottom, that we are launching this year. We partnered with a number of EV recharging developers across the country to establish a voluntary carbon standard. It's an international standard. That standard was approved last year. And we are now onboarding all those recharging systems into a voluntary carbon offset program. So we're actually, we've got a number of these developers in queue, and our goal is to find purchasers of these voluntary carbon offsets so that we can generate revenues and reinvest those revenues with the focus here in Connecticut on low to moderate income segments of the market. So that's an overview of our financing programs in terms of fiscal year 2020 and our targets in 2021. Why don't we move to the next slide, Andrea, where we'll dive into the incentive programs. The incentive programs are things that we administer on behalf of the legislature or regulatory authorities. These are essentially cost-effective programs that deliver maximum clean energy deployment. And of course, we are known for administering the residential solar investment program. You can see from this slide here that we exceeded our targets across the board. I can tell you before we headed into COVID-19, we were nearly at our yearly target. We were doing very well. COVID slowed us down a bit, but you can see we exceeded the target. We're going to talk a little bit later about the impacts COVID-19 has had on the stability of the residential solar industry. Across the board, you can see the Smarty Loan, which is our partnership with local community banks and credit unions, did very well. So we met and achieved our targets. And then Solar for All is our effort to ensure that solar PV and energy efficiency is being deployed in low to moderate income communities. And you can see that for the most part, we exceeded our targets there, a little short on capital deployed and installed capacity, but we've managed to reach a number of households to help them reduce their energy burden. Let's go to the next slide. And just to wrap up in terms of the fiscal year targets here for incentive programs, again, we've got some ranges here in terms of COVID-19. What you're seeing in terms of the RSIP program is a range that reflects us achieving the 350 megawatt public policy target. Hopefully, we will see an extension to the RSIP in some way. If we do see that, then we will support more projects in the queue, which is what the higher end of the range reflects. And you can see we've kind of moderated things a bit given the instability that the residential solar market is experiencing as a result of COVID-19. Solar for All, again, is a proportion of those projects that are for low to moderate income families, less than 80% of area median income. Battery storage, we had this last year, you might recall, in our strategic plan, specifically under an electric efficiency partnership docket. This year, we managed to work with a number of partners, and we're going to talk about them here in a second, to submit a battery storage application underneath the Equitable Modern Grid docket. We'll talk about that in a second. Our hope is that this proposal will be supported by PURA. And then lastly is our Smarty Loan program, where we've established some targets there. And we do have in the marketplace currently an interest rate buy down program specifically to support 3 key areas for Connecticut confronting climate change. That is EV recharging in your homes, renewable heating and cooling in your homes, and battery storage in your homes. So if you're a contractor out there or a customer who's looking to install those technologies, right now we're running a special offer up to 2.99% for up to 10-year maturity terms on the Smarty Loan. So that is just a quick recap of fiscal year 2020 and what we're looking at in terms of fiscal year 2021. Why don't we move to the next section where we're going to delve into more detail on the incentive programs. I'm going to be tag teaming with Celia Price and Sergio Carrillo. So why don't we go ahead and move to the next slide, Andrea, where I could introduce our new guest here with us this afternoon. So I want to let everyone know, if you haven't heard already, Celia Price has been with us for quite some time, over a decade now, Celia, and she is in a transition and is likely over the next 6 to 12 months to be moving from the state of Connecticut to Michigan. I'll allow her to say a few things about that transition here in a second. As you can imagine, this program and the results that we're delivering here, Celia working with the team have done an incredible job. So passing the baton is always difficult, and transitioning all of that knowledge and experience is going to be really important. And we hired, as the director of our incentive programs, Sergio Carrillo. Sergio went through quite an extensive search process. I think it was 6 parts in the end, but he comes to us from Delaware, where he was leading strategic planning efforts for a utility there on renewable energy. He has a history in procurement for commercial and industrial customers on the electricity and natural gas side. And already within the first 2 weeks of him being here has jumped right in and engaged with the team. Why don't I give Celia a moment to say a few things, and then we'll turn it to Sergio to introduce himself. Celia, you want to say something?
Thanks, Brian. Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to say it's been very fulfilling to be working at the Green Bank in support of the clean energy industry. I'm very grateful to Brian and our hardworking team. And also very grateful to all of our residential solar contractors and third-party owner partners that we've been able to collaborate with and learn from. And we hope to continue doing that in support of this industry. I'm very happy to welcome Sergio to our Green Bank team, and I look forward to his leadership on our programs and look forward to supporting him and the team during the transition.
Hello,
And,
everyone. Yep.
Oh, go ahead, Sergio. I was just going to say, yes, you're next.
No problem. Thank you. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here. As Sally and Brian said, my name is Sergio Carrillo, and I'm the new director of incentive programs. For the past 7 years, I worked with a natural gas and electric company headquartered in Dover, Delaware, where I led the strategy, development, and execution efforts. Part of that strategy included clean energy technologies, including solar, combined heat and power, compressed natural gas, CNG, renewable natural gas, and others. And prior to that, I held different financial roles in energy marketing companies, leading retail electricity pricing for residential, commercial, industrial customers, and also wholesale electricity procurement processes. I am very excited to be here working with this exceptional group of people, and I'm looking forward to keep up with the excellent and great work that Celia has done over the last few years. That's going to be a challenging task.
Excellent. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you.
So
ahead,
Sally, why don't I turn it to you? And Andrew, if we can go to the next slide, we'll continue tag teaming here.
Thank you, Brian and Sergio. And so on this next slide, we wanted to give you a little bit of, just remind you a little bit about the background of RSIP and the status of where we are today. So as many of you know, the RSIP program was legislatively enabled through Public Act 1180, Section 106, and it was most recently updated by Public Act 19-35 last year. And that most recent update brought us up to a target of 350 megawatts, 350, updated from the prior target of 300. And that target specifies that we need to deploy that much capacity on or before December 2022. And just as a reminder to those who are on the webinar, we've heard there's been some confusion about when net metering ends. Public Act 19-35 also decoupled the end of net metering from RSIP, so they don't end at the same time. Net metering ends December 31st, 2021, and the tariff compensation structure that's scheduled to replace net metering is expected to be in place in 2022. We don't know the specifics of the tariff structure yet, including how high that tariff compensation rate will be. So there's a lot that will still emerge over the next year and more. Now, in terms of the RSIP status, as of September 1st, we had approved approximately 342 megawatts out of our 350 target, or 98% of the target in terms of approvals. As of today, we're still at about that same number, even though we're a couple weeks further along, because we've made sure to work with contractors to cancel projects that aren't moving forward to make sure there's room for new submissions. And so that's sort of offset any new submissions we've gotten in the last couple of weeks. So we're still at about 342 megawatts. Just in terms of a couple of statistics, program-wide, about 75% of RSIP projects are third-party owned and about 25% are homeowner-owned. And the other interesting milestone we've reached recently is we've reached $1.3 billion of total investment in residential solar through this program. About $150 million worth in terms of the incentives that the Green Bank has provided. And the rest has been provided by the private sector or all of those customers investing in solar. That's nearly a 9-to-1 leverage ratio. So that's a very, that reflects a very efficient program. In summary, we're about, well, we're less than 10 megawatts away from reaching the target, and we're estimating reaching the approvals that are needed sometime in October. But we, of course, need to see those projects to completion. And so there's a little bit of monitoring we'll be doing through that process. And as a result of that, and the fact that we're so close to the target, we're implementing what we're calling an RSIP closeout process in case RSIP is not extended. And that's just to make sure that we're accurately providing approvals for incentives just up to that target. And then let me pass that on to Brian, who I think is going to give us some legislative and regulatory updates.
Great, thank you for that, Celia. Yeah, so in the coming slides, you can stick on the prior slide, just stay on the prior slide for a second, Andrea. So I am going to go through kind of how COVID-19 has impacted the stability of the residential solar industry, because right now, as Celia mentioned, we're about to hit 350 megawatts, which would be the end of the RSIP. But if the industry is unstable, which it is, and I'll review some of those statistics in a second, we need to figure out a way of trying to help support the industry and stabilize the industry. So for any of you who are out there and listening and are advocating to the legislature to extend the RSIP, continue to do so. We're trying to look at a number of ways, not only of doing that, but also exploring regulatorily what can be done to help the RSIP. But as of now, there's nothing concrete. Let's go ahead and go to that next slide, Andrea. So what you're looking at here are essentially summarized results from 2 surveys. The first survey was run in April of this year, the middle of April. These were surveys developed by the Green Bank, DEEP, the Department of Economic and Community Development, Advanced CT, the Governor's Office, and the utilities, where we wanted to see what COVID-19 was doing to the clean energy industry. So what we're looking at here is actually a subset of the data specifically to the residential solar PV contractors. What you can see from that early April survey is pretty significant impact of COVID-19 on their business. How detrimental has COVID-19 been to your business? 8 out of 10 sad faces in this case. So really detrimental. I think the average for the survey was 8 out of 10 across all sectors. When asked, how long is it going to take for your business to recover once COVID-19 is under control? You can see there 6 to 12 months. So quite a long run rate in order for these local companies to get back to where they were once COVID was under control. Versus survey number 2, which was done in the early part of July. This was after the Paycheck Protection Program that went out. I think nearly all of our companies but one received support from the Paycheck Protection Program, so that's a great result. You can see the detrimental impact COVID-19 has had on their business has dropped a bit, so 5 unhappy faces out of 10. In terms of how long will it take for your company to recover once COVID-19 is kind of under control? You can see some are ready to go now, others say 3 months, but the number that really worries me is 12% will never recover. So those are some of our local companies that just aren't going to be able to weather the storm given where we currently are. And in fact, I just got some unemployment numbers updated yesterday, and Connecticut's clean energy industry has lost 12% of its jobs since the end of 2019 as a result of COVID. So it is having an ongoing persistent effect on the stability of the market, and specifically the residential solar market. Let's go to the next slide, Andrea. So beyond the survey, we also collect a lot of data. So this is data that the RSIP team collects with regards to applications that are submitted for incentives by contractors. What you're looking at here is in the blue chart, this is the amount of megawatts of applications that are being submitted a month. And the red line is that month compared to the same month in the prior year. What we want to see is steady or continuous growth. We want to see something above the green line. And you can see before COVID-19 hit, our market was doing well. It was steady, growing year over year. But since COVID, we've seen less applications coming in. And that makes sense, right? Because the demand side of the market is, households are staying at home, social distancing, a little bit anxious. So that results in less applications coming into the program. Again, we want to see growth. We want to see stability. So this isn't a good sign. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide here depicts the end of the process. This is when the projects have been completed and contractors are submitting completion work to the Green Bank for the final incentive payment. Again, you can see here what's happened as a result of COVID. This data point is important because where the prior one is focused on customer acquisition or marketing, this one actually deals with construction and jobs. This is when we know work is being done to install these systems. So again, we see a lot below the line, the green line, but in August was a big worry. We know that that's a typical vacation month for New Englanders, but seeing such a drop year to year is not a good sign. Let's go to the next slide. Last week, we had a conversation with our residential solar installers. We had great participation in the webinar, as Celia was alluding to, in terms of how we were looking at winding down the RSIP if the program is not extended. And given that participation, we had 80 participants in the webinar. I think they represented 80% of our market. And we asked them a number of different questions. Stay on that slide there. Thank you, Andrea, sorry. And we asked them a number of questions in the webinar because we wanted to gauge where they were with regards to their business. So this first question was, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being the least and 5 being the most important, how important are the following to the residential solar PV industry in Connecticut? And it's pretty clear, right, that net metering is still on the contractor's mind. So, the idea of transitioning to the tariff in January 1st of 2022, as Celia noted, is still on all of their minds as a business. And then, of course, we've got the federal investment tax credit that drops from 26% to 22% starting January 1st of 2021. So those are really key drivers to the finances of a solar PV system. But right there, you see the residential solar investment program as number 3 on this list, with both the PBI and EPBB projects equally roughly supportive of wanting to see that continue. Let's go to the next slide. So we also asked them, how would you rate the following barriers to greater customer adoption of residential solar PV in Connecticut? Give 1 to 5. This one's interesting because you can directly see the dilemma that our solar industry is in. Literally, they are sandwiched between the economic uncertainty that's being caused by the public health crisis and the phase out of the federal ITC. So given that our RSIP is coming to an end here, they're anxious given the ITC coming down and COVID-19 impacts. So to us, this is clearly a signal, a current signal, further supporting the need to extend the RSIP in some way in order for us to not only achieve the 350 megawatt goal, that's going to be achieved, but more importantly, we need to ensure that we have a stable industry that can continue to provide quality installations to residential end use customers so that they can reduce the burden of energy costs, and hopefully also begin to install battery storage so they can become more resilient to grid outages. So this was really an interesting finding here as well. I don't know, Celia, Sergio, if you had anything else you wanted to add on some of these findings, but it's clear to us, no matter what the metric, that the industry is unstable and we need to do something. So for those of you who are listening, whether that's an extension legislatively, whether that's us figuring that out regulatorily, we need to figure this out because the industry needs some stability in the near term. All right, why don't I, let's go to the next slide, and Celia and Sergio, if you have any other observations as we're moving through the slides, let's go ahead and raise them. Celia, we'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Brian. And I think you covered that well. And, just to reiterate, we need to do whatever we can to help support the industry during this time. There is a tremendous amount of uncertainty. The industry's really been tough over the last 6 months, but it is still a difficult climate to be operating in. And, the ITC reducing again and customers facing the economic uncertainty, we recognize that maintaining an RSIP incentive is really important for the industry right now and through when the tariff starts. So we think helping the industry bridge that gap is very important. Now this slide that we're looking at now pertains to the RSIP closeout process that I alluded to earlier. And again, this is assuming there's no RSIP extension. We're still hoping that that could still happen, but we need to plan for if it doesn't. And I won't go into too much detail on this. This is primarily pertaining to residential solar contractors and third-party participants. But again, given that RSIP has less than 10 megawatts to go before reaching the 350, the Green Bank is implementing a closeout process. And we provide that information on our Green Bank Power Clerk webpage, which is shown on this slide. So if you're a contractor and you missed our webinar last week, please go to that site and make sure that you review the webinar recording and slides and all the materials that we'll be providing there. And with that, I think we can move to the next slide.
Excellent. Why don't I take this and Celia, we'll tag team as we see on our slides here. So one of the other mechanisms that will help the industry is to find a way of providing incentives to residential end use customers, commercial customers, and the like, access to battery storage. For those of you who are following legislation before COVID-19 hit, there was House Bill 5351, which was the energy storage bill. But as that bill was kind of making its way through, there was also a docket number 171203, the Equitable Modern Grid docket being led by Chair Gillette at PURA, the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority, where they're taking up 11 different issues. One of those issues is battery storage underneath REO 3, reopener number 3. And the Green Bank submitted a proposal into that docket, essentially seeking to deploy 50 megawatts of battery storage in combination with residential solar PV by the end of 2025. So reaching 10,000 customers and helping them put storage on their solar PV systems. And this is important because not only will it provide backup power to those hosts, delivering more value for solar PV, but we'll also be able to socialize some of those benefits to electric ratepayers and the grid by allowing the battery storage to reduce demand, specifically peak demand. So this proposal that we put together, and we'll make it available so everyone can take a look at it, was submitted to PURA, and it's our hope that PURA will delve further into it and provide support behind it. Let's go to the next slide. So the way we designed the program was we did a really rigorous job, a comprehensive job. We took a look at industry research. The Energy Storage Association has a really good research report on various program designs for battery storage. We had a number of conversations with the solar PV industry in Connecticut, those who are doing battery storage or want to get into battery storage. So we took all that feedback. We also did some market research. We did some willingness to pay surveys. So for those of you who are interested in data on what residential homeowners in Connecticut or Smarty Loan customers think about battery storage, it's available in our Solarize storage proposal. So we'll make that available to you all. It's really great data. We had nearly 2,000 respondents. So we used that study to inform our program design. We also looked at regional best practice battery storage programs from northeastern states and tried to assess the net present value of those incentives so that we can get a sense of cost effectiveness in Connecticut. How could we design something that was within reason, looking at our colleagues in the Northeast, and develop something that was going to do more from it. And then lastly, we developed a cost effectiveness tool with Guidehouse. They're one of our consultant partners, and we developed a cost effectiveness tool that calculates different tests, you know, a participant cost test, a total resource cost test, a ratepayer impact test, a societal cost test. All these different tests we can now calculate through this spreadsheet program that we put together for this program. So from it, we designed a very cost-effective program that's going to deliver maximum value to Connecticut ratepayers. Let's go to the next slide. Let me turn this over to you, Sel, to go from here. Celia, you want to handle this? You might be on mute.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you. Thanks, Brian. So the next two slides provide some details about the program design that we submitted to PURA. And as Brian mentioned, we did a lot of research to combine the elements of other programs and incentives that we thought would be effective, and also made sure that we did benefit cost analysis in detail so that we could justify the expenditure of the state. And so I just wanted to share that we have seen that there is a lot of interest in battery storage from customers. So our overarching goal is trying to figure out how to make it more affordable to make battery storage more affordable to customers so that they can adopt it, since it's still an emerging technology, still expensive, while also providing significant benefits to the grid and therefore all ratepayers. And we of course then can quantify those benefits to show that in fact the program would be meeting those benefits. So on this slide, we're illustrating two aspects of the program design: an upfront incentive from the Green Bank, as well as a performance-based incentive from utility demand response programs. So the program has these two aspects. So on the left side, this shows one aspect, which is the Green Bank providing an upfront incentive. And in exchange for that, we would ask the customer battery to provide passive dispatch, or we also call it set it and forget it, meaning that the battery will dispatch to help meet the on-site load for the customer during pre-specified times. Usually we define that as the ISO New England summer peak hours. During the summer when there's a lot of need for electricity, dispatching those batteries during those peak hours provides benefit to the grid. It helps lower electricity costs for everybody. So that would be the baseline benefit achieved by the program. In addition, we recognize that the utilities can still, on top of that baseline benefit, provide or allow customers to participate in an active demand response program, such as Eversource's Connected Solutions program, in order to capture additional benefit. So with the demand response program, the utility will schedule an event, say a day ahead, and will ask that customer's battery to dispatch during that event. And not only can that battery help meet that customer's load, but can also export extra energy to the grid and provide additional benefits on top of the passive dispatch. So our design tries to capture all of the benefits, maximize the benefits to ratepayers, and also help, therefore, justify the incentive costs to the state. So let me go to the next slide, which is related to the one we just showed. And on this slide, on the left side, the graphic shows what's happening during the passive dispatch. So the light green bumps, you can see there's 3 of them. This is representing 3 days where solar energy is being produced starting in the morning, and then into the evening it dissipates. The light blue line, which you can see starts out negative, is where the battery is charging. And then you can see the light blue line goes up because the battery is then dispatching up to that light gray line where it's meeting the on-site load, just up to that load. And say it does that for 3 days, and then the utility can call a peak event when they know that they're expecting a lot of demand. So say that's day 4, they let the customer know ahead of time, or we set up the software systems to be able to handle this. And then the battery not only dispatches to meet on-site load, but you can see on the top right, this graphic shows the light blue line on the top right goes way up, and that's because the battery can dispatch and export extra energy to the grid and thereby provide even more benefits to all ratepayers. So that's the design that we came up with. And again, the combination of the incentives can provide more attractive economics for customers while maximizing benefits to the grid. Next slide.
Excellent. Thank you, Celia, for that overview of the program. The only other thing I guess I would add is that there'd be no less than 20% of the battery stored as backup for the host. So in a case where there might be some sort of weather-related incident on the horizon, the battery could actually store up to 100% and be used for backup. So we've designed the program to have that backup element, so we're adding value to the host. So obviously it takes a village when you're thinking about this type of program. We had a number of partners submit letters of support to our application. It is an application that also includes the utility playing a role here through the conservation and load management program, as Celia talked about with the DR, the demand response program element to it. So we're excited to see all the players involved, and hopefully through the docket I was referring to, we will seek support and can offer this incentive in the new year. It would be our hope. So with that, why don't I transition from here to Mackie Dykes, who's going to walk us through some cool updates on our financing programs. Andrea, let's go ahead and move forward. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Brian. This is Mackie Dykes. I'm the Vice President of Financing Programs here at the Green Bank. I'm going to give a couple updates on a few of our different programs and products. So first, I hope most of you are already familiar with our Green Bank Solar PPA, our power purchase agreement. This is a program that allows building owners to sign a power purchase agreement with the Green Bank and lock in so you go solar and lock in a fixed power price for the power from that solar, but the Green Bank and our partners will own the system. It's a great structure. You know upfront cost. Us and our partners cover 100% of the cost. You lock in a lower electricity rate than you're currently paying. So you're cash flow positive from day one, and you don't have any of the headaches of ownership. This is a great program. I've been very successful with municipalities, nonprofits around the state, primarily with stakeholders who don't have the ability to monetize the federal tax credits. But as we were working with customers on this program, we learned that financing and the PPA as a solution to the financing barrier is not the only barrier that customers, especially municipalities, encounter as they're thinking about or wanting to go solar. So next slide, please. So that led us to introduce our Solar MAP program, our Solar Municipal Assistance Program. So this combines the PPA along with a full suite of services to help municipalities access renewable energy and access the savings from a solar project. You know, where we were typically helping out, which is again the PPA, that's the end of a long path that you have to walk to get to the point where you're worrying about financing. You know, that path starts with just the simple question. Well, where would solar work? And would solar work at this building? If so, how do I go about finding a partner to help design it? How do I pick a contractor? How do I access incentives? How do I finance it? So we designed Solar MAP to help municipalities answer all those questions and to take a lot of the work from them and have us take it on so we can help them get to the end of that path, which is realizing the green energy savings and the benefits of the renewable power. Next slide. So how do we do this? So we will, if you're interested, I encourage you to reach out with us, reach out to us. Start with just some basic information gathering. And when I say basic, it is very basic. It's just tell us every single property that you're, where you've got an electric meter there, where you'd like to explore the potential for solar. We'll do a preliminary check on that. Make sure that there's no obvious barriers to doing it. You have too much trees, too small, things like that. And assuming there's a path forward from a technical perspective, we'll then put together a preliminary design. We'll look at electric bills to inform that design. We'll do a site visit to inform that design, and then come back to you and review the project proposal to make sure that it meets your needs. Once we have that project finalized, the Green Bank will run an RFP to select a contractor or contractors to build that system. And this is where one of the other key benefits of Solar MAP comes in, because rather than the municipality running an RFP for their one or two projects, we're combining multiple projects from multiple municipalities. So by aggregating all these together, we're able to hopefully achieve cheaper pricing in the aggregate than you would have gotten for single or smaller projects. So we can drive down the construction costs, which will result in a cheaper PPA price for the town. Once we've done that, we've secured the incentives, then we come back and we execute the PPA and build the project. So through this, we're really taking all the as much of the work as possible away from the municipality and really just coming to you at those key decision points. Does this system meet your needs? Does it work? And then when we come back for the final PPA, is this pricing, we saving you enough money, and does all the schedules and everything meet what you want? And we sign it and then go solar. So we're just finishing up our first round now. We got 7 towns we're working with, and we're starting to build a second round right now. So please reach out to us if you're interested. Next slide. So switching to our CPACE program, Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy. In recognition of the challenging times that many businesses find themselves in, and the usual mantra, cash is king, is even more important now. We've designed flexible repayment terms to help get more of the energy savings, the initial energy savings, into building owners' pockets. We've got 2 options. One is to defer your first 2 payments. So what this means is that for 18 months, you can have no CPACE payments. So all the energy savings from a project go directly into your pocket. And then the payments will pick up later. You'll still be cash flow positive when those payments start, but you've benefited from up to 18 months of cash flow going to you. Second option is interest-only payments for up to 3 years. So in this case, you're still starting some repayment at the normal time when the project completes. However, there's only interest only, and we can stretch that for up to 2 years. So you're making reduced payments and having more of that cash flow go to your pocket rather than your customer's pocket rather than into the repayments. So again, both these are crafted really with just trying to shift in the early years of the project more of the energy savings benefits to building owners. Next slide. And one other CPACE offer that we are relaunching. We had just launched this right prior to COVID, but in light of the times we found ourselves in, we shut it down. We are going to reopen it as we are starting to see some businesses reopen. So this is our Charge Up CT Buildings initiative. This program gives building owners that do a CPACE project of a certain size, we will provide them with free EV chargers. Start one charger up to 3, depending on the size of the CPACE, of the energy efficiency CPACE project that you do. I should note this is not available for solar projects. This is geared towards energy efficiency. So we're excited about the ability to continue to utilize CPACE, which is a great tool to help building owners save money, make their buildings more sustainable. Now we can offer this additional feature of helping them modernize their building, provide this EV benefits to their customers or tenants, while at the same time recognizing realizing on the state's important goal of building out the charging infrastructure in the state. You can find out more information about this at chargeupctbuildings.com. And then actually the previous offer I forgot to mention, if you just go to cpace.com, there's more information on our flexible payment options. Next slide. And then we've got a new initiative that I'm excited to talk about. We recently released a RFP for Green Bank Capital Solutions. This is, we recognize that not all projects fit into one of our existing programs. So, with the desire to continue to find any way that we can to meet our goals of increasing and accelerating the investment in clean energy in Connecticut, meeting the state's goals, we put this out just to really capture anything else that is out there, any projects that are out there. Next slide. So this RFP will be sort of open on a rolling basis. So we'll take proposals as they come in. We've got clear, objective, and transparent criteria that we're evaluating projects on, and we will strive to be market responsive and adaptable. We'll be quick in turning around answers, and where it might not, a first proposal might not clearly fit into our objectives or criteria, we'll work with you to see if we can craft something on maybe on a second take that would work. Next slide. Just a few I think sort of key things to mention. We are looking at either already commercially viable technology or a demonstrated clear potential for viability. All these projects should fit within the clean energy goals of the state. From a financial standpoint, we're always looking to leverage private capital with CGB capital. So we're not looking to provide 100% of the project funding in the form of Green Bank capital. We'll look to the developer or whoever the submitter is to have identified other sources of capital, or in a few cases, we can lead and work with you to bring in other partners. But again, we're always looking to leverage private capital rather than supply 100% of the funding. Next slide. In addition to meeting state clean energy goals, it also needs to meet our Green Bank goals, obviously. It also needs to be clear that Green Bank participation is essential to the project. We're not looking to displace private capital that would otherwise clearly be accessible. There needs to be a reason for the Green Bank participation to be necessary, other than just if you want to work with us, or Bert and his team are great. We're always looking to make sure that we're leveraging and making projects happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. Obviously, is the project feasible? Do we see a pathway to project success from a technology and equipment standpoint? And then we'll look to how replicable it is. Is this a one and done, or is it something that we could scale either here or elsewhere? Next slide. And I won't go through this in recognition of the short time. You can find the RFP and how to apply on our website, ctgreenbank.com, in the RFP section.
Excellent. Thank you, Mackie. Thank you for that review of Green Bank Capital Solutions and all the other initiatives. Really exciting. So yeah, we're running out of time here. I'm going to move through this section pretty fast, but if you do have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. Ed is monitoring them, and we'll try to address a few at the end. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Andrea, and click one more time. Perfect. So just, I mean, it's obvious, right? Everything's around us. We can see it in California, with the impacts of climate change. We know that green bonds have the potential to increase investment, not only in our state, but across the country, to help confront climate change. In 2019, $255 billion of green bonds were issued. About $50 billion of that was in the US, and about 60% of those green bond proceeds were in clean energy, renewable energy, and energy efficiency. This slide here just shows a Forbes magazine article speaking about the importance of green bonds. But what's interesting about this article is that it not only cites two of the preeminent energy companies seeking to confront climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it also highlights the Connecticut Green Bank's award-winning asset-backed security that we issued last year. Let's go to the next slide. With green bonds on our minds, we wanted to learn more about our Connecticut residents and understand the local market for green bonds. So a year ago, working with Great Blue Research, we conducted a survey to Connecticut residents to understand their level of interest in green investment. We surveyed families that had already demonstrated their interest in green technology by installing rooftop solar PV. And we also surveyed everyday families that hadn't installed solar. They were just simply randomly selected. And we asked them, if you were interested in investing in green projects, what types of green projects would you support through your private investment? And we can see here that recycling and waste reduction is the #1 green investment of interest, with clean water and solar PV projects as at #2 and #3 respectively. Let's go to the next slide, Andrea. In addition to knowing about the type of green projects families would support, we wanted to also learn about their current investments. We wanted to not only understand whether they were making investments in stock portfolios, 401ks, or other funds, which over 85% of the respondents were, but we also wanted to understand their knowledge about investments available in the market. Over 60% of the respondents believed they were knowledgeable about investment options in the market, including interest in purchasing mini green bonds or small denomination bonds whose proceeds are used to support green projects. And as we began to analyze the responses from the survey, we discovered that smaller denomination bonds, those bonds that are at $1,000 or less, become more attractive to more families or more accessible for investment based on household income. This research actually helped us design a bond of interest to investors who want to confront climate change. Let's go to the next slide. So in honor of the 50th anniversary of Earth Day, the Connecticut Green Bank created the Green Liberty Bond. It's a type of green bond whose proceeds were used to invest in projects that confront climate change in Connecticut. Beyond providing families and businesses with access to capital to finance clean energy improvements, which is what we've been talking about today, the Green Bank is now issuing bonds so that families can invest in green projects for others in their community to save for the planet. Next slide. A Green Liberty Bond essentially has three specific features to it. First, the use of proceeds from the bonds have to go towards projects that confront climate change. So that can be mitigation projects or adaptation projects. Second, and this is modeled after the Series E war bonds of the 1940s, is that the bonds must be able to be purchased by everyday citizens through smaller denominations. So the research that we did informed us that we need smaller denomination bonds in order for people to be able to buy them. And more than 85 million Americans purchased Series E war bonds totaling $185 billion back in the 1940s, which translates to about $3.25 trillion today. So a significant mobilization of people to invest in confronting a problem. And thirdly, because we want more and more citizens to buy these bonds, there have to be consumer protections embedded within them. So they're required to have independent certification and verification that the use of proceeds are being invested to confront climate. So a Green Liberty Bond is simply a category of green bonds, and we're inviting anybody else out there who is issuing green bonds, and $50 billion in the US last year. Let's make those bonds available to everyday citizens, not just Wall Street, because citizens want to invest in clean energy deployment in their communities and in their country. All right, let's go to the next slide. Here's just a breakdown of how the Green Liberty Bonds went. We had 1 to 10-year serial bonds at different interest rates there. We had a 15-year term bond. I wanted to thank our designers, Bob Lamb of Lamont Financial, Bruce Chudwick of Shipman and Goodwin, and Bettina Brown Eyes of the Treasurer's Office, along with our Green Bank team led by Bert Hunter and Mike Yu, who really put together this program for us. This was our first Green Liberty Bond. We're going to try to do 2 a year. So stay tuned if you are interested in buying these bonds. Go to the next slide. We'll just kind of wrap up here before I have a few other things to say. So we sold out every year and every term of the bonds. We had more demand than supply. So what this tells us is we need a bigger issuance size. We were unable to meet national demand. So we had more than $10 million of demand from citizens. We were able to serve 5 million of demand from Connecticut citizens, but we were only able to serve 1 million from national. So we want to enable more people outside of Connecticut to invest in Connecticut. So next time we will design our product to be able to do that. We also had demand from institutional investors, environment, social governance investors, and traditional municipal investors. But looking forward, we're going to issue a larger bond, and hopefully we'll be able to enable more citizens to invest, and potentially looking at a zero coupon bond. Paying $750 today and getting a $1,000 bond, whatever, 5-10 years from now. So that's a quick summary of our Green Liberty Bonds. A few other items. Let's go to slide 42, Andrea, and I'll wrap up here. It's been a while since we had our last conversation. We have several new board members. I'm not sure our stakeholders have realized this. Lonnie Reed was designated by Governor Lamont to be the chair of the Connecticut Green Bank. Mike Lee steps in for Mary Sotos. He is the vice chair from DEEP. He's the bureau chief of energy, technology, and policy. And Brenda Watson, the executive director of Operation Fuel, was appointed by A to Z Speaker Arosimowicz. So these are the 3 new board members on the board. And the last slide, Andrea, just kind of wrapping up, what have we been doing on federal advocacy? We've been focusing a lot on the National Climate Bank, replicating Connecticut's Green Bank into a national infrastructure. The Moving Forward Act passed by the House in July, which was the $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, included a $20 billion clean energy and sustainability accelerator, which was essentially Congresswoman Dingell's floor motion to create the National Climate Bank. So we will send out that language on the bill with our follow-up here. It's great to see that, and I'm watching closer. There's more activity happening at the federal level on this as well. Connecticut is also part of the United States Climate Alliance. Governor Lamont and Rebecca French is our lead here in Connecticut, our director of climate change. There are 25 governors around the country who are still in on the Paris Agreement. They represent 55% of the population, 60% of the national GDP, and only 40% of the GHG emissions. So collectively together, we submitted a letter. Connecticut was leading the effort to Congress to support the modernization and decarbonization of our infrastructure. So also including the support of a national green bank. So Connecticut was very active in leading that effort with the USCA. So lots of activity happening on the federal front, and our hope is that we will be able to see more enablement of private investment in the improvement of our infrastructure. And I think that's it. Ed, we'll turn it back to you and see if there are any questions.
All right, thanks, Brian. So we have one question so far. So if anyone else has questions, please submit them now. If not, we can send out answers with the presentation, which we will send in a few days. First question, what, if any, options are available for reallocating excess capital to refinancing of legacy PV lease customers?
I'm wondering who would take that. Mackie, is that something you would take? Maybe ask it again and let's.
Yeah. So sorry. So that might be more a question for Celia or you, Brian. So has there been any consideration of how to help the existing residential solar PV lease customers? I assume they're referring to SL1 or maybe SL2 customers who may want to buy out of their lease. Is there anything in consideration to help those customers either buy out of their lease or kind of move on from the end of their SL1 into getting a new system?
A good question. So let me take a stab and see, Sally, if you wanted to follow up. So I believe on SL1, those were 15-year leases. So we're actually getting pretty close to the term of those leases coming up. Some of them are probably coming up, which means that once the lease is up, you know, this person here is asking the question of what can be done. I'll just flag it for our team to take a look at. What comes to my mind is if we needed to refinance, I would suspect, given the useful life of the measure for another 10 years, that we might be able to refinance it with a Smarty loan. But let me flag that there. And Celia, I don't know if you had any other thoughts. But that
Sure.
would be
Yeah, I think, well, we have a couple folks on our team, Stephanie Atruya and Bill Colonis, who usually help with questions like that. So I think there is a buyout option. I don't know if there's a refinance option, but my email address is on this slide deck. So if you send me an email, I can connect you with our team to help you get an answer to that question. So that's celia.price@ctgreenbank.com.
So the last question that I have here is the Green Bank considering a residential PPA similar to what we have for commercial?
So good question. We've actually already been there. Back in 2012, 2013, you might recall the Green Bank had a lease product. I don't know if we had a PPA element to it. I think it was structured as a lease, a fixed lease, or an escalating lease. But because there are now private lease providers or PPA providers in the market, we really don't want to displace the private investment. So we had it in the early days because we needed to provide consumers and our local contractors with the ability to offer that form of financing. As we attracted more third-party owners into Connecticut to support those customers, we moved out of the market. So our whole goal as a Green Bank is to be a catalyst to investment in the market. We very much feel like we did that, and there are a number of PPA and lease providers in Connecticut that can either support contractors directly with financing to their customers or provide directly to their customers access to third-party capital.
Thanks, Brian. So I don't see any more questions. Again, if anyone on the line has any other questions, our email addresses are on the screen now. So with that, thank you for joining us today, and we will have a copy of the presentation and a recording of the webinar sent out within a few days. Thank you.